Welcome back, everybody, to Watcher of All Things. My name is Kiki, and this is my podcast where I talk movies, TV shows, and all things entertainment. And today, we have a huge episode to go through. It is episode 89, where we are talking Peacemaker Season 2, a big DCU chapter. It's now the third project in the DCU. We are going to have so much stuff to cover. There will be timestamps. Do not worry. There's going to be a big non-spoiler section where I'll talk about the season as a whole, and then in the spoiler section we'll really get into the season finale and what ends up happening, as well as we're going to talk about some theories of where things are going to go in the DCU, and it's just going to be a lot of fun. I'm really excited to talk about all that stuff, but for now, I hope you are all doing well. Just about Thanksgiving weekend when I'm recording this, so happy Thanksgiving to all my Canadians. I know Americans, you guys don't celebrate till November, you goddamn weirdos. In Canada, we do Thanksgiving in October, which I think is way better, a little further from the Christmas holidays, and lets you sort of break up the turkeys or the hams, or I don't know. What do you guys, what do you eat at your holiday gatherings? I'm way more of a ham person than turkey, but that's beside the point. Today we have so much to get through, so enough horsing around. Like I said, timestamps below. Also, go check out my YouTube video from this month, which was my physical media and comics collection. It was so much fun, but for right now, I think we should hop into the news because there is just so much to cover, and it was a crazy week news-wise. I'm not even going to touch on the Timothée Chalamet, Marty Supreme stuff, but it has me super excited. But what do you say? Should we hop into the news? Let's do it. All right, well, our first piece of news, we have a bit of an update about Damien Chazelle's next project, and it turns out, I thought it was going to be some kind of Evel Knievel thing with Leonardo DiCaprio, but it is actually a prison set film with Cillian Murphy and Daniel Craig, which is, what? That sounds amazing. Damien Chazelle, you know, he's had a rough go from Babylon, obviously, but he has done fantastic films, one of which we have talked about on the podcast, La La Land, one of my 4 favorite films ever, and I'm happy he's going to get back in the director's chair because he's truly a unique voice, he's a unique talent, and I think Babylon shouldn't really be, you know, putting him in director jail, which is highly ironic that his next film is literally a jailbreak film, probably. Some life imitates art, or art imitates life. Cillian Murphy finally going to have like a leading role, I would presume, which is interesting considering he said that after Oppenheimer, it wasn't as many leading role offers as you would think after winning the Best Actor award at the Oscars and starring in Oppenheimer, the Best Picture winner. He said it like wasn't as revolutionary as he would have thought it would have been. So I'm glad he's getting this, as well as Daniel Craig. I think he is just such a great talent. I mean, holy shit. He was a great James Bond, obviously, but he's in a lot of good other films like Logan Lucky. He was in Queer just last year. He's Knives Out, Benoit Blanc, of course. So I'm very excited for the two of them to work together because they kind of have very similar personalities outside of their acting. Like they're both very keep to themselves and they aren't huge on the interview process or on press runs. They could seem like they would be sort of a little bit cranky, but they're actually just sort of quiet and reserved, and there's nothing wrong with that. And the composer of the film, I'm not sure who it's going to be, but they said it is the best script that they've ever read, which is huge, and I'm very excited because I think Damien Chazelle is ready for a little bit of a comeback, and I think this film could be really big for him after Babylon, which of course just keeps growing in fandom, and I've still only seen it once. That might be a mission of mine next week to watch Babylon because I think it does deserve a second chance. Maybe I'll even make a video on it at some point because it's just such an interesting case study of how a film could literally be like 50-50 down the middle. People liked it, people hated it, and it was just so divisive. Oh no, this is such a fun and like chapter-ish film that's all about the love of Hollywood, and then the other half saying this is so, you know, self-indulgent. But our next story, Heat 2, is officially happening, and it is actually not happening at Warner Brothers. It is happening at Amazon MGM. This comes from Boris Kitt, who works for THR. He said, exclusive, Heat 2 is happening. Amazon MGM division United Artists has beat out several companies to nab the Michael Mann crime thriller, which was put on the shopping block by Warner Brothers after budget issues. There are already rumors about who's actually going to be in this film. For the longest time, everyone was saying, oh, know, it's Austin Butler and Adam Driver. Heat 2 is sort of a prequel and a little bit of a sequel because it's about Val Kilmer's character after the events of Heat, and then it's also a prequel of everything before Heat. So right now, there are rumors that Leonardo DiCaprio, Austin Butler, Adam Driver, and Bradley Cooper are all circling the film to star in it. However, no offers have been made yet. I could see a world where maybe all four of them are in the film together if Austin Butler is playing a super young Val Kilmer and Leo and Adam Driver are the young De Niro and Al Pacino, and then you have Bradley Cooper as older Val Kilmer. That's just a lot of star power in one film, and I think people would come to the theaters to see it. And I mean, I've spoken about Heat 100 times before, and it's a great film. It is so enthralling from start to finish. It's one of those movies that if you want a good action thriller suspense film and it's just very moody, that is like the ultimate movie that you can watch. It's one of the like highly praised classic cinephile film bro movies ever. Of course, it's Heat. Everyone loves Heat, and great ass. You know, this is my favorite Al Pacino line in the film. But this sounds really cool, and I'm excited. I've heard that the book is not that great, Heat 2, that Michael Mann wrote, but I'm hoping that maybe, I don't know, maybe the film he could work at the kinks that didn't quite work in the book, and if he's rewritten some things, it could be a lot smoother. But that's probably going to come in 2027, 2028, and I'm very excited for it. I'll be there day one. I am so excited to see who stars in the film. But let's move on to our next story. Some other big news this week. George Clooney has said that Ocean's 14 is moving forward and there are plans to begin filming next year. Let's go, baby. I love the Ocean's trilogy. I actually just got them all on 4K on a single like box set, all three movies for $25 or something like that. Insane price for 3 4Ks. But George Clooney says we just got the Ocean's 14 budget approved at Warner Brothers. It's just setting a start date for us, probably start in about 9 or 10 months shooting. When asked if he was excited to reunite with Brad Pitt, Clooney told E! News, yeah, Brad Pitt, Matt Damon, and Don Cheadle, and Julia Roberts. I had dinner last night with Julia. They're all still really dear friends, and so the chance to work together would be fun. So it looks like the whole crew is gonna be back. I don't know, all those other guys, I mean, some of the cast members in the original have passed away since, but Ocean's 11 was a very early movie in my lifetime. I think it came out 2001, right? And I remember, I hadn't watched it till I was probably 8 or 9, but I remember having the DVD case in our movie collection at home for many years, and I was always like, oh, that's like all of those guys, and that guy played Batman, talking about George Clooney. So finally, when I did watch it at like 8 or 9, it was such a fun Las Vegas heist film, and it's honestly one of those movies I would recommend to anyone. Like, I think no matter the film genre of what your genre, you know, your favorite, Ocean's 11 is just such a fun movie to watch, and 12 and 13 honestly are good. There are some truthers out there who think Ocean's 11 is not the best one. I have not watched 12 and 13 for probably 5 or 6 years, and I've only seen them a couple times. Maybe they're always on TV, so that might be a fun trilogy to rewatch soon. Actually, I rewatched Ocean's 11 last year with my girlfriend. Yeah, it still holds up. It's still a great film, but I'm very excited for this to possibly come to fruition. But let's move into the confirmation of the Beatles biopic cast, as Saoirse Ronan was added this week as Linda McCartney. So we have Paul Mescal as Paul McCartney, Harris Dickinson as John Lennon, Joseph Quinn as George Harrison, Barry Keoghan as Ringo Starr, Saoirse Ronan, the newest member, as Linda McCartney, Anna Sawai from Shogun as Yoko Ono, Amy Lou Wood as Patty Boyd. I'm very excited for that, as well as Mia McKenna Bruce as Maureen Starkey. This is a crazy cast. Like, this is a lot of very good young British and Irish actors that I'm very excited to watch. This is so big it went outside of the film circles because my girlfriend sent me the Saoirse Ronan casting news and was like, oh my god, did you see this? And I was like, I know, I'm excited for this. I love Saoirse Ronan. She did a movie last year called The Outrun that, like, it wasn't amazing, it wasn't like mind-blowing, but it was genuinely so good and such an interesting film about addiction that I would recommend to a lot of people. She's one of my favorite actresses. Like, just so many things she's just so good in, whether it's Lady Bird, whether of course it's Little Women, but The Outrun last year, she was genuinely phenomenal and you should watch it. She has a movie this year that was at TIFF called Bad Apples that I didn't get to see, but I'm excited to watch that because I do love Saoirse Ronan, and I think this is a really good cast. Like, this is a cast that will get people in the theaters because you have, you know, Paul Mescal fans, you have Harris Dickinson fans, you have Joseph Quinn, the Stranger Things fan, fans and Marvel fans even, but Saoirse Ronan is giant. Even Amy Lou Wood, Sex Education, and now The White Lotus, like, people are going to be there and they are going to be interested, and I'm very excited to see how that pans out. But I think I will wrap it up with this news story that allegedly Netflix is bidding to get streaming rights for future Champions League football games, and I add this in here because I am a huge soccer fan, and sports streaming is a huge issue in Europe. It's a huge issue in North America. Every sport, every competition in sport is streamed on something different. The instance in soccer, so I'm a Manchester United fan, and when they rarely do make the Champions League or now the Europa League even, that is on the app called DAZN. The Premier League games are played on Fubo. Then the FA Cup is played on Sportsnet, and the Carabao Cup is also played on DAZN. So you have all of these competitions that are spread across 3 or 4 apps in Canada. So if you want to watch every game, you have to pay so much money for monthly passes or annual passes if you know it's going to be an all-year thing that you want to watch. Versus now, if you already have Netflix, if they have this super popular app, just get the streaming rights for a sport like they do with WWE, I think that could be really interesting. However, do they have the infrastructure for it at Netflix? Are they going to have the capability to stream it? I'm not sure, but this is a very exciting potential for me because I do miss watching every Champions League game because I don't have DAZN, and I hate the illegal bootleg streams because they're just so shit and they're so hard to close the pop-ups and they lag all the time. They shut down when something big happens, and it's just really annoying. So this is a very fascinating story. I'm curious if it means Champions League, Europa League, and Conference League, the 3 European competitions, but we'll have to wait and see. This is still very early in the works, but I think it could be a very big thing. And speaking of big things, I think we should hop into Peacemaker Season 2 non-spoilers because we're going to have a lot of ground to cover, and this might be a little bit of a longer episode. I hope not, but timestamps below. Once again, if you only want to know the non-spoiler stuff and you vaguely know what happens the first few episodes, kind of, I don't tell anything of where our show ends up. We'll get into that in the spoiler section, but let's do it. Let's talk Peacemaker Season 2. Alrighty, Peacemaker Season 2. Of course, Peacemaker is an action comedy series directed and written by James Gunn, but this season there was actually a few other guest directors that came in: Greg Mottola, Peter Soleil, and Altia Jones. Reviews are widely positive with 96% on Rotten Tomatoes with an 80% audience score. The Season 2 synopsis is: the season continues the story of vigilante Chris Smith / Peacemaker, who finds an alternate dimension where his father and brother are still alive, and the family together is a highly regarded superhero team. It is set after the events of the DCU film Superman 2025. The show stars John Cena as Chris Smith / Peacemaker, Daniela Brooks as Leota Adebayo, Freddie Stroma as Adrian Chase Vigilante, Jennifer Holland as Amelia Harcourt, Steve Agee as John Economos, Frank Grillo as Rick Flag Sr., Robert Patrick as Augie Smith, as well as David Denman as Keith Smith / Captain Triumph, Saul Rodriguez as Sasha Bordeaux, Tim Meadows as Langston Fury, and a few other fun ones that pop up like Newt Lee as Judo Master or Michael Rooker as Red Saint Wild. But here we go, Peacemaker Season 2. My initial thoughts are pretty good. Honestly, pretty solid for the most part, but not amazing. I think it is a little bit weaker than Season 1, and there's a few reasons why I think that happened and how it happened, which we are going to get into, but I think overall a very fun, entertaining season of television. But let's talk about the performances of the people I have just mentioned, starting of course with John Cena as Chris Smith / Peacemaker. He was seriously one of the highlights of this season, was seeing him grow as an actor and really doing some heavy dramatic lifting that left me in tears a couple times. I think there are some incredibly moving moments from John Cena in this season, and it's just amazing to see how far he's come since his first appearance as Peacemaker in the Suicide Squad or even in other films he's done. Like, I remember being a kid and watching him in The Marine when he was still pretty much a wrestler, but he is an actor. He is a certified actor. He's funny. He can do the dramatic stuff. He does the action great, of course, because, you know, that's his bread and butter, but I was blown away by a lot of scenes he had this season and really how he carried himself dramaturgically, as Kendall Roy would say. But then let's get into Danielle Brooks as Lee Adebayo, one of the highlights of the show, and I'm going to talk about her and Chris's friendship eventually, but Adebayo is such an underrated character for what she brings emotionally to the show and how really grounded she is, because she, you know, as a person of color in a TV show, sometimes your issues are sidelined for the sake of white characters, and you just have to be this incomplex, headstrong, wise, strong black woman in a TV show, whereas she has her flaws, she has her issues, she has her own character arc in this season that I thought worked. But then we have Freddie Stroma as Adrian Chase, who I think is probably the funniest person in this show. I mean, this is a very funny show, and I really do love a lot of the cast members, but Adrian Chase, Vigilante, is such a lovable, stupid character who just is always pushing scenes to almost being unfunny because of how many jokes there are, but he's so good at just keeping it, you know, perfectly in line and then sort of guiding us into the big emotional beats. And I always forget that Freddie Stroma, the first thing I saw him in was actually Harry Potter, and I think he in Hunger Games as well? Maybe, no, I don't think so, but he's in Harry Potter and I think the Half-Blood Prince. He's the Quidditch player that's an asshole, and he's just so funny as Vigilante, and I can just watch. Okay, I can't go into spoilers, but you know, there's just certain things that he does this season that are just comedically some of the best stuff we've had in the show, as well as Steve Agee as Economos. I actually think they really let him flourish this season, and they give him a lot more to do because he is the bridge between Argus and the 11th Street Kids, our group of vigilantes or peacemakers, our Lee Adebayos. You know, he is the one that's in between the two groups, and I like how much James Gunn just let Steve Agee be that bridge, and he is funny, he's very sensitive, and he has his anger issues and his quirks, but he genuinely does care about these people. And I do like how this season, you know, John Economos and Peacemaker are way more friends than they were in season 1, and they now trust each other, and his phone contact for Economos is Econogoat. It's just a really touching element of the show that Steve Agee brings to it. And then we have Jennifer Holland as Amelia Harcourt. I think Amelia Harcourt is a very good character. Whether her character arc fully came together this season is another question, but I think Jennifer Holland was really, really good this season, and specifically episodes like 6 and 7, as well as episodes 1 and 2. And keep in mind, she's kind of playing two characters in the sense that they go to the other dimension, as seen in all of the trailers, and there is the other Amelia Harcourt that Chris is meeting and is, you know, in love with. So she's kind of having to play these two very different versions of Amelia Harcourt, and I think both of them are really fun, and she is just really good. I'm kind of ready for us to step away from this team for a little while within the DCU, and it is nice that we're going to see a different batch of characters in our next few projects, whether it's Lanterns, Supergirl, or Clayface. It's going to be shifting to sort of different groups. But Frank Grillo as Rick Flag Sr., I think a mostly okay character. I don't think Frank Grillo is a very good actor, but Rick Flag Sr. worked for the most part because of a few elements in this season where he's trying to get the revenge on Peacemaker for killing his son, which he's finally come to terms with. That's kind of a motivator this season, but not really. We'll talk about, you know, Frank Grillo as Rick Flag Sr. and Jennifer Holland as Amelia Harcourt in the spoiler section specifically, and what happens to them. They're not related in what happens to them, the two of them, but on the bigger picture and what happens to their characters individually. But yeah, I mean, it was just honestly a stellar cast. I think David Denman as Keith Smith was such a great addition. Saul Rodriguez as Sasha Bordeaux. Tim Meadows as Flurry was probably the best addition this season. He was absolutely hilarious, and I was so happy he was joining the cast because he seriously brought it comedically, and he gave me so much of what I wanted. But let's move on to the story of Peacemaker Season 2. What was the story this season? You know, sometimes you watch a season of television and you're like, episode 1 to episode 6 or 8 or 10 or however long it is, you're like, was it a consistent extended movie, or were they really trying to go problem of the week? And this was very much one long issue in this, and it's all about the quantum unfolding chamber and how it related to Superman and the black hole in Superman that we saw at the end of the film. I do think there was generally a strong thread throughout the season, but I think a lot of events in the season didn't really relate to each other, or just felt like they happened because they had to get to this other thing, or we didn't really know where we're going. But for the most part, I do think the quantum unfolding holding chamber as a MacGuffin or whatever you want to call it mostly worked because of Argus trying to get their hands on this new tech, and they're trying to fight back against the metahumans, and we'll go into spoilers what we think that means for the future and what Twitter and Reddit thinks for the future as well, because I screenshotted a lot of fan theories I want to read to you guys today. But I do think for the most part, the story of Peacemaker Season 2 is not as good as Season 1. I think the butterfly stuff was a little more concise, a little more ground level and easy to write than Season 2. It's just trying to set up big things. But directing the series without James Gunn, I think we need to acknowledge that versus Season 1, this is a season of a television show that's written by one person but not directed by that same person who often directs what he writes, especially now. You know, it's been a long time since he's written something and not directed it, but the episodes that James Gunn is not featured on, you can feel it a little bit. It does feel like someone sort of trying to align themselves with the overall style of the show, but it's not quite there. And there was another show this year that we were talking about, and I can't remember what it was. Maybe it was Severance, or I don't know, Andor. Maybe we were talking about, or The Last of Us. I can't remember, but we were talking about directing styles within a single season of the show and television shows. Maybe it was Andor, because we were talking about the batches of episodes. But I do think there is generally something that could be praised in modern TV with 8 episodes, how directors, you know, tend to do all 8 episodes, but sometimes you do get these shows that will change it up completely. And it's almost like people directing different scenes of a film, and you have to really applaud the shows that are able to make it seamless. Versus, I feel like Peacemaker Season 2, where there were a couple moments where I was like, I don't know, this feels like someone trying to do it in a James Gunn style. Like, the writing is still there, yes, but some of the camera movements and the action and some of the jankiness that isn't normally there is noticeable to me, at least, as someone who is a fan of James Gunn's stuff. So that's going to happen when you do change the directors. In a series, you can't possibly get them to be James Gunn exactly. But for the most part, I do think it's a well-directed season of television. Now, we do need to address that this is a television show that is related to a film and another television show. This is within a shared universe. So how does it fit into everything? How is it watching it as someone who has seen everything? I do think this builds on Superman really well, because it's sort of loosely referencing where we end up at the end of Superman as metahumans versus the government. That the government is now starting to get skeptical, and they think that metahumans are calling the shots because of Superman stepping in and the Justice Gang. So we start Peacemaker Season 2 with Rick Flag Sr. now running Argus, and he says we need to do something about the metahumans. That's an easy connection, and I think generally people who maybe did not catch Superman or watched it once and maybe they watched it on release week and they don't remember every single detail from the film can still enjoy Peacemaker Season 2 without the show feeling like Superman is homework. Same with Creature Commandos. I think Rick Flag Sr. at one point does mention events that happen in Creature Commandos, and you don't really have to dwell on the details, and it's just very refreshing to have it be loosely connected but sort of feel spiritually in the same realm, which it is. And this show does not feel like homework at all. Like, I did not feel ever watching this TV show it only exists to set up a future movie. It felt like these are characters that are being cared for right now. These are characters that I want to enjoy right now. These are not characters that simply exist to get us from box office movie to box office movie. You know, this is an established team that people love, and it thematically carries on the torch very well, leading us into the next films in a way that doesn't feel like mandatory viewing. And I just think that's really big in a shared franchise, and I do think that is one of the promises that James Gunn is delivering on. He is delivering on the promise that you don't have to watch everything. Like, if you don't watch Creature Commandos, that's fine. You don't have to. You can just watch Superman, and then you could probably watch Man of Tomorrow. We'll talk about that in spoilers, whether I think that's actually true or not, but I do appreciate that Peacemaker doesn't feel like it only exists as someone who is trying to do the next thing. Now, this is the most important question that I have possibly ever asked. The Peacemaker Season 1 intro versus the Peacemaker Season 2 intro. Which is better? What are they trying to do with it? Well, the first week I thought, you know what? The Season 2 intro is pretty fun. I don't think it's bad by any means. I am officially team Season 2 now. I think the Season 2 intro is a vast improvement. Season 1 is still very good, but it's not trying to tell a story like Season 2. Using the song Oh Lord by Foxy Shazam and the dance, it's all much more emotional and trying to say what the season is about, versus Season 1 with Do You Want to Taste released it was just like, oh, let's do a fun thing. Let's just do a dance intro because people aren't going to be expecting that in a TV show. And I applaud that. Brilliant idea. I think it's so much fun. And it made people talk about the show because they're like, oh, have you seen the Peacemaker dance intro? It's so weird. And same thing with season 2. I think people watch the dance and they're like, oh, that was different. Not as good as season 1. And now everyone, almost everyone I have seen talking about the dance intro toward the finale was saying season 2 is better because you have this song that's talking about it's a lonely world, they're going to eat you alive, and there's always a wrong to your right. It's very much giving the themes of the season, and it's just expertly weaving in music with the project like James Gunn always does. We'll talk about music in the finale in the spoiler section, but I guess I can mention it now that there is 2 scenes in the finale that feel like a concert video, and it's very distracting, and it was a huge overboard, but maybe I'll get more into details on that later. But I have to say, the season 2 intro really works. As the season goes on, it feels like every lyric has more meaning, and everything starts to make more sense as you don't skip the intro. I honestly couldn't believe anybody skipping the intro, and I haven't seen one single person say they skipped the intro. Now, as funny as this show is, there were many lines that made me laugh out loud, like crying laughing, hilarious jokes. The action is really good. Like, this is the classic James Gunn action that we love from the Guardians of the Galaxy, from Superman, from Peacemaker season 1, and specifically episode 3, when Peacemaker goes into the other dimension. We get a lot of action in that episode, and it's so fucking good. It was like John Wick in the DC universe. It was some of the most entertaining and exciting action that we had, and it was Greg Mottola who actually directed that episode, and it felt so dynamic. It felt fresh. It felt exciting. It was violent without feeling overly fake and just violent for the sake of it because that's what we have to do. I really appreciated that it delivered on that, because this is not a show that is just a big CGI fight fest. This is very much a character-driven show, and I do think we need to rewire our brains a little bit thinking about Peacemaker after a bunch of Marvel TV shows and even other DC TV shows or whatever, where it's meant to be a huge fight and a cameo fest, whereas Peacemaker season 1 was not that. There were fun mentions of things, but it was not a cameo fest, other than the big Justice League thing at the end, which was retconned in episode 1, and I think worked so well. I didn't even have that in my notes because I've spoken about it before on the podcast, but the retconning and canon, no issues in this show. Honestly, that's such a minute detail. I don't even think about that anymore. But as for the DNA of this show, I understand that people were maybe disappointed by the lack of cameos and disappointed by the lack of major stakes or big, huge fights, but I think the action we do get is really good, and it's action that is needed in this small, more intimate, personal show that James Gunn is telling. This is about Chris Smith and his friends who are very normal people. They are not extraordinarily powered individual beings. They are not gods like Superman. I think when people talk about Peacemaker as a TV show, they need to really step back and think about, okay, but what is this show? What is the DNA of Peacemaker? Now, having said that, stepping back, speaking of which, is the problem of the show big enough, and does it feel like it's spoken about enough? Was it clear and teased early enough why Rick Flag Sr. is interested in Peacemaker? I think it kind of is, but it doesn't feel like there's enough dramatic tension on it of why we need to get this thing and why we're trying to save the world. It's very generic and loose details like I'm telling you right now. It's almost like they're trying to keep it non-spoiler in the show until the end, which I think maybe revealing some details a little bit early on and why Rick Flag Sr. or what he's looking for would have been way more interesting, and why, because it could have invested it a little bit more and it could have had our characters be like, holy shit, he wants it because of this. But I understand maybe they're trying to keep the mystery of the show, but it did take away a little bit of the intensity, and the intensity of the show I think is important to talk about because this does feel like a television show that is written by someone who is working on a lot. It feels a little bit distracted. It feels a little bit unfocused and maybe leaning too hard into James Gunn's friendships, which he in every project always has his friends working on these things. But it just felt like this is a television show that is not giving up for the sake of more attention on the films, and the show only exists to get us from movie to movie. But it feels like a show that was written as a side project, and it's kind of a smaller thing that is like, whatever, I'm only writing this because I have this other big thing that I'm working on. And it does just feel like James Gunn kind of took on a little bit more than he could chew, and I wish there was more of a writing break between Superman and maybe more of a break between watching or releasing Superman and Peacemaker rather, because he could have seen what did people respond to. But I get that he has to serve the larger universe and he needs to establish projects quickly so people can understand what's going on in this big universe, and I do like that and I appreciate that, and that's part of the game. The show just has a lot of setup, and every week it felt like we were setting up the next thing, and nothing really comes to fruition until episode 6. You have 5 weeks of a lot being set up and promised, and I wonder where this is gonna go, and it kind of doesn't really lead anywhere too crazy, or it felt like the destination wasn't really worth the journey. Not to say like, oh, I wish I didn't watch it, because I still think it was incredibly entertaining week to week and I had a lot of fun, but there was a lot of moments where I'm like, could this have been in another episode as a shorter scene? Yes, I think episode 4 and 5 generally could have been combined as one, and they were both very short episodes. In fact, almost all of the episodes were under 40 minutes. It was a very short runtime for a season as a whole compared to last season, and I just think perhaps we could have had 6 episodes instead of 8 episodes, so the writing is way more concise. But I don't know. It felt like the really good episodes came toward the end when we finally had the things delivered, but otherwise it was a lot of spinning our wheels. There's a lot of groundwork laid at the start of the season that feels like it's just continually built on like this romance between Chris and Hardcore, or Hardcore's toxic masculinity issues at the start of the season. And it's really interesting how it's kind of all abandoned with Hardcore's toxic masculinity stuff towards the end of the season. I feel like, without spoiling anything, we don't really get a proper investigation or look into. We get some nice scenes between Chris and Amelia, but I don't know. I felt like the attention was a little bit deflected from Hardcore and sort of onto Chris, who has to deal with her issues for her, and she's not willing to deal with these issues herself. And I think the romance in general kind of felt a little bit underdeveloped, or I sort of stopped caring towards the end and just wanted to know the greater mysteries. And maybe that is because there's other characters, there's more attention to go around, but I would say one of James Gunn's main strengths as a writer is introducing new characters into established groups while not making it feel bloated. I really liked all of the new additions except for one, and that is Michael Rooker as the what the hell's his name, Red Saint West or whatever. I didn't like his, I don't know, storyline with Eagly. I just thought it was kind of a waste of time. I love Eagly as a character, but he's kind of on the back burner, not really helping the team after a while. But again, there's a lot of things introduced, and not everything has a worthy payoff in the end. And in television shows, not everybody gets an arc. There's a lot of characters, and not everyone in this show really had an arc throughout the season. It's kind of fun because there's characters like Flurry who are just kind of along for the ride, and they have sort of an arc. I guess in spoilers, I could be more specific with people, but a lot of the characters in this show, their arcs are very minimal, and it's the perfect amount. It doesn't feel like everyone is being overserved, and it's like, oh, but now we need to do their thing and remind you of what their thing is. It's just a lot of our main characters, their arcs are very scattered all over the place. I'm thinking Hardcore in specific, but thematically the show did really work for me, and the themes of this season being, stop thinking about what life could be like in other lifetimes. That's the use of the dimensions is really good in this show, because it is trying to talk about grass is always greener and daydreaming about what your life could be like in another reality, and oh, well, what if I did that one thing, and what if I just changed this one thing about myself? My life could be completely different. And I appreciate those themes and how they really brewed throughout the season and paid off in the end, as well as listening to yourself. Sometimes it's just about getting out of your own way and listening to what you want and doing it, rather than listening to people who are misguiding you or constantly serving other people or being a people pleaser, because that is who Chris is. And a lot of this season is about him needing to listen to himself and start to trust himself, and that for all of these characters, your past does not have to define your future. All of these people have made very bad mistakes, and like the song says, had some long fucking years or whatever, but you gotta carry on. And that is what this show is trying to say. It's trying to say there's always going to be those problems in your past. There's always going to be bad things in the world, but you need to forgive yourself and just start moving on and doing the right thing now. You can forget the past, but it's about doing the right thing in the moment. It's never too late to change yourself. It is never too late to start doing the right thing. And that is what this show was really about, Peacemaker Season 2, and the friendships really do show that so well. And I think Adebayo and Chris is like one of my favorite TV friendships. I just think they are so different from each other. Obviously, Chris growing up in a very racist white household, being this vigilante dude, Adebayo being a black lesbian woman who is the daughter of Amanda Waller, but in some ways they have grown up both having to listen to extremely shitty parents who have forced them to do things that maybe was not their decision, but they had to do it for the sake of the pressures around them. And I love what they have in common, but at the same time, their differences is what makes their friendship so beautiful. And the whole 11th Street Kids group is so gorgeous, and I love the friendships in the show. But the finale on a whole, without spoiling anything, I just think it was my probably least favorite episode of the series because it was the longest of the season, and yet it felt the most sort of scattered and a little bit empty at times. There was season-long pacing issues, I think, where there were episodes that could have been really condensed, like I said. But let's move into 2 stars and a wish, because I do have to get into spoilers and really spend time on some theories I want to talk about. Star number 1. This is a superhero property that's actually trying to say something about people and the emotions that we have to live with and the issues that we all carry in our lives. And I think that's something to be admired. It's not just a CGI, nostalgia jerking slop fest that's like, hey, remember this other thing? Or, oh, let's smash all these action figures together, which is really what Star Wars has become now in a lot of Marvel shows. Star number 2, like I said, the show never felt like homework. There was never an episode where I'm like, oh my God, they're just setting up and reminding us of so much stuff. Like, oh, remember in Superman this happened? Or, oh, hey, well, in the future, you never know, this might happen. My wish, just more concise writing. I think this should have been 6 episodes long, or there should have been more that happened, perhaps in episode 4 and 5, or just make it a little tighter in general. But look, overall, I still enjoyed it a lot. Season 1's definitely stronger for me because it's not having to set up anything, so it sort of has a different burden of trying to entertain people who are tired of a universe, so it can just be going up against the low expectations. And maybe that's to its advantage, actually, that season 1 was in a shitty universe people stopped caring about, so it was like, well, if this is good, it's actually a miracle, versus this season, it's like, this has to be good because it's connecting and setting up all of these movies. So there's a different pressure at play here, but I give Peacemaker season 2 a 4 out of 5. I think it was pretty good, not exceptional or great. I enjoyed it a lot, but let's hop into spoilers. Alrighty, spoilers for Peacemaker Season 2, here we go. So I want to start actually with Amelia Harcourt feeling completely different in certain scenes in the finale. Like, she is this hard, outer shell, tough woman that will beat the fucking shit out of guys in bars. She's very emotionally rough on the inside. So there's scenes in flashbacks and with the boat stuff in the finale, and it's spoilers, so you know about this if you've seen the show, or you don't care if you haven't seen the show. In those flashbacks, she hasn't had those conversations with Chris yet about her being unlovable and all of the emotional resolution from the end of the show. So I just don't really get why she's so different on that date with Chris where they're at Big Belly Burger, and it just feels really out of sync with the character, and it's a little bit too much character swinging from, Magnet or South Magnet to North Magnet, whatever the saying is. It's a little bit too polar opposites for one character to possibly go through emotionally. And at first, I had the same thought with Rick Flag Sr. I thought his evil arc in the finale was way too quick. Like, it just felt like he was a completely different guy willing to work with Lex so fast, and it just was like, I don't really know if that works. But I want to read you this tweet that I saw this morning. Cameron Walsh, who is a TikToker or a podcaster that I like a lot of the stuff he does, but he says that they are not the same character, referencing Creature Commandos Rick Flag Sr. and Peacemaker Rick Flag Sr. But Joseph Dies Tonight, who is at Slither2006, tweeted, "They are, though. Flag is a manipulative piece of shit in both shows. He says he cares about the Creature Commandos and then gets them killed just because he was horny for a fascist. He says he's sorry to arrest Superman, but he does it anyway and then continues to work with Lex. In Peacemaker, he acts like he cares for Harcourt, but it's just a lie so he can get to Chris. And he does the exact same thing to Bordeaux. He's the exact same guy guy. He's a corporate and government bootlicker, which is the perfect parallel to Superman and the 11th Street Kids. And that's just, it's so true though. I don't know why I was so surprised. Like, oh my God, Rick Flag Sr.'s turning against everyone. Of course he is. He has literally turned on everyone and been irresponsible in all three things he has been in now. So it makes sense for his character that he is a piece of shit. I think I'm a little bit past the issues I have with his character. But now we can talk a little bit more about the finale in general. And I do want to talk specifically hyper-focused on that scene with the team coming together and Adebayo giving Chris that beautiful pep talk as a best friend, saying, Chris, you need to start listening to yourself because you are magical, you're wonderful. Danielle Brooks was just some amazing acting with tears strolling down her face, and everyone in the room says how much Chris has changed their lives for the better. Lee tells him, when you listen to other people, bad things happen because you don't trust yourself to make the right calls. And Chris says, oh, well, when I listen to myself, nothing happens. And they're like, no, you touched me. Like I saw a man hug an eagle, or we love you. And it's just such a great friendship moment for this group when someone in your group is down, struggling with these self-esteem issues. And all of these characters are in certain different ways, but Chris, the most in that moment. And that is a true friendship group. One of the best emotional moments that we've had probably ever in Peacemaker, other than episode 7 with Keith, where they're all about to kill him and Chris tells him to stop. Like, it's just, this show, it wasn't great in season 2, but when it was, if that makes sense. But speaking of Keith and Earth X, did we leave it a little bit too quickly and leave it in the dust? Because it feels like expected after episode 7, oh, Keith is definitely going to come back, because why else would they tease that he's alive? Does he forgive Chris in that moment, or is he going to show up in Man of Tomorrow? I don't know. And I thought there would have been maybe more cameos from that Earth, but you know what? If James Gunn isn't a cameo guy, that's fine. But I should list off all the cameos that we've had. So we had Rick Flag Jr., which is my favorite of the season by far, Lex Luthor in Belle Reve, Sidney Happerson, Lex Luthor's computer guy, Agent Fitzgibbon, and I think the Rick Flag Jr. one was amazing, and I wish he could have come back somehow, but you know what? They have to go in another direction. But as for the finale, no, we didn't really get any cameos, which was surprising, but we did get the establishment of Checkmate, which you might be like, Checkmate, what is that? So Checkmate, according to DCFandom.com, is a government intelligence agency established by Amanda Waller as an independent branch of Task Force X. The organization took its name from the winning move in chess, blah, 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 blah. Anyways, so we have the 11th Street Kids who are now in the security business / government ops business, but instead of being run by Amanda Waller, it's run by all of our, main characters. And who knows, maybe the Waller show will actually be her leaving Argus and joining Checkmate to work with her daughter and work against Argus and the evil that they're doing in the world by imprisoning metahumans. I really liked that reveal that they're all working together now, and it feels like a group truly coming together. I loved that Flurry's in on it. Sasha Bordeaux is in on it. Judo Master is now in their group, and he's just so funny and serious. And there's one moment when they're going through all the doors and he's still wearing his mask. Hilarious. I loved that. But I thought the Checkmate stuff really worked, that they're this friendship group, and that slow montage was originally going to be...
This is a reminder. Text landlord.
I have to text my landlord. Did you guys hear that? Anyways, the original ending for season 2 was going to be that slow motion walk of our group leaving the building. James Gunn had written the ending that we did get with Chris being thrown onto Salvation, and when he handed in the script to Peter Safran, Safran was like, oh, you have to put in that Salvation thing. It's so good. Like, it's going to lead us into the next chapter so well. And I think the Salvation ending does work really well in general. I liked the Checkmate stuff. Sending Peacemaker to Salvation was a great ending that really did shock me, and I think we should just talk about the future of the DCU and where things are going to go. So Salvation is a run in the comics. It's a super obscure comic run, apparently. Like, it's only for the mega nerds and mega experts that really know about Salvation. So Salvation, the synopsis is, as a result of their killing the Flash, Captain Cold, Mirror Master, and Abracadabra and the Weather Wizard have been sent to the planet first. After 2 weeks of fighting, they are starting to snipe at each other, and the minor injuries are beginning to mount. So Salvation Run is a DC event tying into the countdown to Final Crisis. Amanda Waller and Rick Flag, through Checkmate and the Suicide Squad, launch a campaign to round up all of the world's most harmful supervillains and deport them off planet. So you can see how they've adapted this, and James Gunn has talked about Salvation Run being an inspiration, of course, and we know what's next for the DCU. James Gunn said it's a part of the plan for the DCU. There's one big story. It involves Salvation, Rick Flag, Lex, and Superman. So those movies I'm going to be directing. I feel like we'll get just Man of Tomorrow for Salvation, and maybe, I don't know, is there going to be another Salvation film, a Justice League Salvation? That could be really cool. But there's another Twitter user at Goodnight Drew who said, my theory for the DCU's future: metahumans will be sent to this planet like the Salvation Run and will debate on whether they should escape the planet or rule it. I think the villain of Man of Tomorrow could be Mongol, who sees this planet and makes it his new war world. They also tweeted that traditionally in the Salvation Run, yes, it's Darkseid as the villain, but we did Darkseid in the Zack Snyder universe, so maybe we'll look for another DC villain. And yeah, I think that's what it's going to be. We're going to get a movie where all of the metahumans are being round up. Maybe we get a Checkmate show where it's all of the metahumans being thrown onto Salvation, this other planet. Now, Home of DCU on DC Studios posted the Salvation Run cover alongside DC, The New Frontier, which is a comic line where the government is really not trusting superheroes. And I think it makes a lot of sense. The New Frontier is set in an alternate DC universe early in the Cold War. It explores the cultural shift surrounding superheroes in the United States, transitioning from the Golden Age to the Silver Age, all as an ancient evil begins to stir. And I watched the movie of Justice League: The New Frontier this morning. I could totally see a hybrid of DC, The New Frontier, and Salvation being combined somehow to really make the point of gods and monsters, the monsters being the government and the gods being all the superheroes. That is what chapter 1 of the DCU is about. So I think James Gunn is trying to establish with this first chapter of the universe the distrust of superheroes who have been around forever, but now they are calling the shots, and people like Amanda Waller, people like Rick Flag Sr. are not liking that, like Lex Luthor. But Lex Luthor is somehow going to be involved and have to help Superman to get metahumans back, or something like that. I don't know. I think it's just really, in general, a great idea to not just make it, let's do Brainiac, which I don't think Brainiac's going to be the villain. I think it's just way better this way. Like, it's just a little too predictable, but this is a very obscure reference that James Gunn is pulling into the main line. And as for the future of this crew, Peacemaker will be back, according to James Gunn. As for this TV show, we'll see exactly what form. We have plans. You'll see all of these characters in the future of the DCU in not too long. Someone on Reddit said maybe a season of Checkmate looking for the portal and Peacemaker teaming with metahuman villains and heroes dumped on the planet. And if you're worried about like, oh, I don't know all of these references and stuff, don't worry about it, because James Gunn said, I'm not expecting people to go into Man of Tomorrow knowing what happened in the Peacemaker season 2 finale. It's a very, very delicate balance when writing these things. You've got to be able to tell the story in a way where people that already know the information are not going to be bored, and where people who don't know the information will get the information in an easy and simple way, but also not to be burdened down by too much shit. But in general, I think this is a really good direction for the DCU to go in, the government versus people trying to help. And who knows what characters are going to pop up? When are we going to get the origins of these characters? Do a lot of them already exist? I mean, it's interesting to hear about the other things that James Gunn was going to put in the finale alone, and it's only been 12 hours since it aired, but he did say that he wanted to put Deadpool Ryan Reynolds in the finale somehow, that the Argus agents open a door and Deadpool's just sitting there and he talked to Ryan Reynolds about it, but there were just too many big loops to go through. We didn't get Blue Beetle, which a lot of people were upset by, and I get that. But overall, I think, you know what, even if the finale was pretty weak, it still has laid really good foundations for what could be a fascinating superhero universe, and I'm very excited for where things are going to lead with Man of Tomorrow. Maybe that will wrap up the Salvation Run, or how is it going to work with Batman the Brave and the Bold? I don't really get how much these things are all going to tie up together, but we are getting Lanterns early in 2026. I'm assuming February or March, so I'm really excited for that. But I think that's all I have for Peacemaker, really. It's just Salvation is the big thing, and DC, The New Frontier. I feel like those are the stories we're going to be pulling on. It's going to be really good. But for now, let's move into what else I watched. Alrighty, what else I watched? Well, this week I have 6 movies, 4 TV shows, and 2 comic books to tell you about. Whoa, double comic book week. Let's start with the comic books. First up is Batman, Ego, and Other Tales. Talked about it a little bit last week, but I finished the whole thing. Batman Ego is a certain story that I want to see in live action somehow, and I think for my October YouTube video, I'm going to do the Batman Part 2 predictions / wish list video. I don't know what to call it, pitch, script, ideas, and I think Batman Ego could be involved somehow, so look forward for my predictions there, but it's just like one of the best Batman stories. And then I read Wonder Man, My Fair Superhero just this morning. Such a fun comic book. Wonder Man is really cool, and they're just starting the promotional stuff for the TV show at Marvel Studios, which I feel like they used AI in one poster and it's really ugly, but I'm not sure if you haven't read any Wonder Man like me. I think it's a good introduction comic because it flashes forward and back in his life between, being an immortal old man in a world that's been ruined by nuclear bombs versus when he's younger and he's a hot shot. So really cool story. Go and check out both Batman, Ego, and Other Tales, as well as Wonder Man, My Fair Superhero. I don't know what to read next week. I might try to get through all of the Batman like Court of Owls stuff, but that might be the next mission. Let's move into TV shows for now, though. Well, speaking of superhero stuff, I did finish this week Justice League, the animated show, not Justice League Unlimited, but the first show they had. So I watched season 2, episode 12 to 26, and some of the show is just so peak and perfect. Like, there's this one episode that blew me away. It's a Christmas episode where all of the Justice League members go and do their own thing. Like, there's a Flash storyline where he's trying to get this toy for kids in an orphanage, or there's the Superman and Martian Manhunter storyline where he invites Martian Manhunter to come stay with the Kents in Smallville, and it's just so good, and all the characters just work so well. Like, it just feels like the comics brought to life, and the group dynamics of that show are exactly what I want in the live action Justice League. Like, just do that. Then I watched episode 5 of Gen V. I didn't get to episode 6 because I just didn't have time to squeeze in one more episode today before the show, but I thought episode 5 was really good. I was loving all the Cypher stuff. It's interesting. They all went back to jail. It felt like a little bit of a backward step that, like, oh, they come out of jail at the start of the show, then they go back into jail halfway through the series, and I feel like we only have a couple episodes left, really. I can't imagine it being more than 8 episodes, so I'll watch episode 6 this weekend. So check out Gen V if you're a fan of the boys, but we did have the end of another show this week, Platonic Season 2, and it's funny because just last week we talked about Bobby Cannavale on Only Murders in the Building. Well, he showed up as the Coyote lawyer detective Charlie's book this week on Platonic Season 2, Episode 10, the season finale. I really liked where they left things. If that's it for Platonic, honestly, I'm happy. Them going into business together to wrap up the show. It's just such a grounded show that, yes, has like the over-the-top comedy, but it just feels intensely relatable and intensely down to earth. I just appreciate it week to week, and I just wish more people would check it out. Let's talk Survivor, shall we? Because rough week for Canadians on Survivor this week with 2 people going home. Yes, Jake went home after a dry bite from a snake, which, do you guys think he was like maybe antagonizing the snake so he would maybe be able to go home and see the birth of his child? I just think it was really interesting that they didn't show, or they weren't filming the exact moment where the snake bit him and he like kicked it away or whatever. I don't know, but I did like that they took us behind the scenes of him going to that medical base camp and sort of pulled back the curtain, whatever, Jeff doing the confessional himself, the talk to camera. I liked it because it's important to see that stuff. If this all happened off camera and they were just like, oh, Jake, we have to take you out of the game, it would have been like, oh, wait, what? They could totally put him back in. But having said that, I think they did pull out a lot of details that you could only get if you searched it up online. They didn't mention the fact that he had to go to other hospitals. They didn't mention the fact that these dry, secret snake bites are extremely rare, and none of the locals that they work with, none of the doctors that they work with knew anything about this and had never heard of the dry bites and what would the effects of a dry bite be. So they had to take him to another Fijian hospital. Then they had to take him to Australia to a hospital there. And I feel like they should have mentioned that like, we need to take you to these other places and continue to do tests, even if you're not showing any signs right now. We don't know what the effect is of this. And it was just like, why wouldn't you guys say that? Because now people online are being like, he should have kept playing. Like, that's no fair to him. But to be honest, I think it was unfair for the other players, because had he gone back back in the game, he had tons of IV drip and stuff like that it would have been a major advantage and like a little bit of rest, but at the same time he would have been a little bit emotionally fucked up. So maybe it's good he didn't go back in, because he would have been seeing things in the night and freaking out. And then we have another Canadian voted off. Jeremiah from Toronto is voted out as well. So it's like, what the hell, guys? We're just voting out all the Canadians in 1 week. They need to do something about these disaster tribes on every season, because it's just not working. Like it's not working. The 3 tribe format is fucking broken. I know we've had disaster tribes with the 2 tribe format, but it needs to be reinvented on 51. They need to go back to 2 tribes and 16 players. Maybe you can keep your 26 days, Jeff, but give us 2 tribes, 26 days. I think it could work that way. But let's move into the 6 films I watched. Okay, I'm gonna start with Justice League: The New Frontier, because I talked about it in the spoiler section. So if you listen to that part, you'll know why I talked about it. But it's a Justice League animated film from 2008. It was not my favorite animated Justice League film I have watched. It's only 75 minutes long, which is not long at all. A lot of these animated superhero comic book movies that you watch are like an hour to an hour and a half, because they're adapting extremely skinny books or short storylines. So I get that, but it felt like it's an extremely short film that introduces so much in the last 20 minutes. Like, we get so many origin stories and explanations in the final 20 minutes. Like, Aquaman shows up at one point. Hello, I am King of Atlantis, Arthur, Aquaman, and I'm here to blah, blah. And it's like, what the hell? This guy's just popping out of nowhere. And it's, I don't know. I like the animation style because it's based on a Darwin Cook book. I would love them to go with kind of those costume styles in the DCU, these like 50s inspired, but like update them a little bit to the modern day, like what Superman had in Superman Last Summer. But we'll see what happens. Overall, it was an okay film. I gave it 3 stars. But let's go back to last weekend, where my girlfriend and I saw One Battle After Another because she wanted to see it. I really wanted to see it again in IMAX. We went to a different IMAX theater, so I saw it at Scotiabank Theater in Toronto. Instead, we went to the Yonge and Dundas Theater. It's a different IMAX screen. It's not like looking straight up. It feels more like 1:4:3:1 ratio rather than it feels like more of a 1:9:1 ratio, I think is what it's called, rather than a 1:4:3 ratio. So it's way less square. It's more stretched out. And it was just as good, honestly. Like, sure, visually it looked different in that IMAX ratio, but the movie is dynamite. I stand by all of my opinions. My film of the year, 100%. I like it even more the second time, which I didn't think was possible. And what I was trying to explain with Perfidia Beverly Hills last week, I couldn't put it into words, but postpartum depression, that's what she has. She's not ready to be a mother, and she feels different when she has the baby, something she's been carrying for 9 months. Postpartum depression was all I was trying to explain, and I just couldn't find the words for it. But I listened to another podcast, House of Cinema, and they talked about, oh, well, her postpartum depression. I was like, that is what it's called. Oh my God. Sorry, I was struggling to explain that, but I gave it 5 stars. Then we decided to hop into some spooky season stuff. So this week we watched Psycho, Alfred Hitchcock's film from 1960. I've only seen like certain stretches of it in film classes or on YouTube or whatever, or it's just referenced in absolutely everything. And I really loved it. I was spooked. It's not a horror film where it's like, oh, there's ghosts and ghouls. It's way more of a suspenseful thriller. If you haven't seen Psycho, which I feel like I'm one of the 4 people in the world that hasn't, you should watch it this spooky season because it's a great old school thriller. I gave it 4.5 stars. Then I watched Tron Legacy in preparation for Tron Ares, and it was a banger, dude. Amazing soundtrack by Daft Punk. Of course, visuals are so engaging. Even if I really love the first Tron movie visually the most because it's just so fun and wonky, like I talked about last week with all the weird animation and cutting people out and putting them on the old school animation. Tron Legacy is such a fun update from Joseph Kosinski, even if the story's not like that compelling, but I did really love the music, the action. It all works so well within the world. I gave it 4 stars. I'd never seen it before. I didn't know what to expect. I knew the soundtrack's going to be good, but I actually did like the visual effects and the world building moving on from Tron so many years later, and I didn't feel like it was trying to just do nostalgia bait. Unlike Tron Ares, which I saw last night at another IMAX theater, the Cineplex Yonge and Eglinton, but Tron Ares, let's get back to the film. I thought it was pretty bad. The story is just so underwritten, and the dialogue is so Family Channel, early 2000s sci-fi. sci-fi, and I can't explain it. It's like, I'm into the mainframe, or bet you didn't expect that. They probably explained what was happening in the film several times in a single scene over and over again. Like every 5 minutes, they were reminding you what the stakes of the story are, what we need to get, where are we, who is this? And it was just so frustrating. Having said all that, the soundtrack was amazing by Nine Inch Nails. I was vibrating in my chair from the bass in the theater. There's one action sequence in the film where it was probably 6 minutes straight of just bass sounds, and I was like, I can't hear anything because this theater is shaking. It felt like I was in a rave, and it was just bumping. The visuals are phenomenal. Like the visual effects look so good. All of the textures are really good with the visual effects, but it is an ugly movie with the color grading. It's so flat and gray. Jared Leto is absolutely dog shit in it, but no one should be shocked. We should just lock that guy up at this point. I gave it 2.5 stars, so, not the worst thing in the world, but certainly nothing I'm probably ever going to watch again. But to finish it off, I watched Anemone on Tuesday night, the new Daniel Day-Lewis film that is actually directed by his son, Ronan Day-Lewis. It's a directorial debut that just worked incredibly well for me. I don't know, it's a rough go. Like there are very clear rookie mistakes going on in perhaps thematically not thinking out things completely or leaving things ambiguous on purpose because you want the movie to be, this mysterious thing, but not really paying any attention to what it could mean. And I don't know. Having said that, Daniel Day-Lewis is still a very good actor, even if he hasn't done it in 8 years. He carried this film because there are so many moments with him that are just so striking. But I'm excited to see what his son does next as a director, because I do think Ronan Day-Lewis has an eye for directing. He definitely has a unique voice. I think if he gets a script that's a little bit stronger and he gets a better editor than his initial film, we could have a real director on our hands. I gave it 3 stars, which I feel like is a pretty positive review for, a directorial debut. If I made a movie and it was my first one and it was pretty well received from the masses, I think it's only in like the 60s on Rotten Tomatoes, and I've seen a lot of 3 stars to 3.5 stars on Letterboxd. People are enjoying it, and I have seen most of the compliments for it being that it's well directed, so it's something to be proud of. But that has been what else I watched. And in fact, I think that's going to do it for episode 89, Peacemaker Season 2. What a time it's been. I can't believe we've already had another chapter of the DCU come and gone. It was a pretty good season overall, even if it wasn't perfect or if I didn't love the finale. But for now, as always, please rate and review the show 5 stars wherever you get your great podcasts like Watcher of All Things, whether it's Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, or Acast. We are, of course, an Acast-produced show. You can actually comment right underneath on Spotify. Let me know, what did you think of Peacemaker? What have you been watching recently? What are you looking forward to for the rest of the year? If you're on the YouTube channel, where we just hit 600 subscribers, very exciting. Thank you all very much. Hit like, subscribe, comment down below. You know the deal. If you want to get in touch with the show, you can actually email us, watcherofallthings@gmail.com, and find me on social media. Instagram and Threads are at watcherofallthings. The TikTok account is at watcher.of.all.things. I post on social media every single day. I do fun little videos. Also follow my personal Letterboxd account, KikiJ70. That's KIKIJ70. Follow me on there and drop a comment under one of my reviews that you found me through the show, and I will follow you back. Let's build a little community. Next week, I'm not sure. I'm between 2 things, whether I go and see If I Had Legs, I'd Kick You again, and we do an episode on that. I'm really leaning towards that way, so I think it will be If I Had Legs, I'd Kick You, or we do Roofman. I'm not sure, is Frankenstein out next week or is it the week after on its limited theatrical run? I'll look into it. So we have a few options for next week for episode 90. If I Had Legs, I'd Kick You, Roofman, or Frankenstein. Probably If I Had Legs, I'd Kick You, but for now, thank you all so much for listening. Thank you all for the love, the nice comments, the messages. Take care of yourselves, and I will see you in the next one.